the 13 colonies and the British Empire. All colonies established by charter from the English crown. They were corporate colonies, joint stock, royal colonies under the direct rule of the king with appointed governor, and propriety colonies under authority of individual granted charters by the king. Growing distinction between colonies and the king's rule. There were political problems like Bacon's Rebellion. Sir William Berkeley was the royal governor of Virginia. He adopted policies favoring large planters, which antagonized small farmers from frontier and offered no protection from Indian attacks. So Nathaniel Bacon, a small-scale frontier farmer, organized an army of volunteers, all attack Indians, soon attacked and defeated the governor forces. Shortly after, Nathaniel dies of dysentery, which was major diarrhea, and his army collapses. But the lasting problems were revealed, like the class of difference between wealthy and poor farmers, and colonial resistance to royal control. The economic issues. Overproduction, so there were low tobacco prices and colonial debt. Labor shortages, there was retarded growth, and the solutions offered were indentured servitude, headright system, which was Virginia offering 50 acres of land to each immigrant who pays their own passage, and slavery, initially Africans held as indentured servants, and then in the 1660s, the laws discriminating between blacks and whites began popping up, and slavery quickly becomes a lifelong status. The religious issues, there were religious issues all over. For example, in Maryland, there was the Act of Tolerance, which grants religious freedom, but required a belief in Yeshua. The act later repelled after the Protestant protest. Rhode Island was founded by Roger Williams, a Puritan minister. It encouraged individual conscience to grow beyond church control, and he was banished from Boston and founded Rhode Island. Anne Hutchinson, she questioned the doctrines of the Puritan authorities and believed in faith alone, not deeds, necessary for salvations. She was banished from Boston also and helped establish Rhode Island. Rhode Island was the only true place that symbolizes religious freedom for all. Pennsylvania was the home of peace-loving Quaker Christian sect, the Quakers. William Penn was a young convert to the Quaker faith. The Quakers of England were persecuted in jails for their beliefs of equality for all men and women and nonviolence. The Holy Experiment was Pennsylvania was being set up as the Holy Experiment to be a testing ground for the Quaker Society. The frame of government was literally their frame of government. They granted Delaware as a separate colony. Mercantilism and the empire. Mercantilism is the economic policy that looks upon trade, colonies, and wealth as a basis of a country's military and political strength. The acts of trade and navigation. English control of trade ships. All imports or exports to or from the colonies must pass through England. There were some positive effects, like New England shipbuilding prospers. Chesapeake Tobacco had a monopoly in England. English military protected colonies from French and Spanish. But there were some negative effects, like the colonial manufacturing was limited. Chesapeake Bay farmers received low prices for their crops. Colonists pay high prices for goods from England. The relaxed enforcement of laws with random tests to tighten enforcements. Slavery had a rapid growth. Their numbers grew a few thousand starting in 1670, but by the time it was 1700s, tens of thousands were already there. In 1750, Virginia, it was half the population of Virginia were slaves, and about 2/3 of the population of South Carolina were slaves. Increased the demand for slaves increased. Why? The decrease in migration to colonies and increased need for cheap labor, increased need for dependable workforce. Slave laws established to keep Africans and their children in bondage forever, and the triangle trade.